Well, we are here with victims and villains, and this is a best casing. I am, I guess, the lead host today, with Josh being out. So we're here today with Andy and the other co-host, Billy, to discuss Aliens as part of the Alien series we're doing leading up to Romulus and see where we take all this.
I'm so excited to talk about this one, guys.
It's kind of weird not having Josh. He's been in all the episodes.
I've never been on here without him, and yeah, it just feels like that guiding force isn't here right now. It's a little strange.
Yeah, he brings about like all the scheduling and coherence.
I won't hear mommy and daddy fight this week like I did last week, so we're good. So I guess let's let Andy start since he's so excited.
I mean, where do you even start? Like, this, guys, is one of those movies I just call like a perfect movie to me. I kind of have no notes and anything that I would say bad about this movie. I will say it's been about, I kind of did the math, and I don't think I've watched this in probably 12 years. So it's been a really long time. So watching it this time was like a breath of fresh air. And it was one of those movies where you're like, I remember loving it, but like maybe if I rewatch it now, it might not kind of hold up the same. I don't know about you guys, but I had a blast watching Aliens.
Well, what's your experience with the Alien franchise in general?
I've always loved Alien. I've always loved Aliens. I've always debated in my mind which one I like more. As a horror guy, I've always kind of leaned more towards Alien, but I did back-to-back them for preparing for this. And there's just something about the pacing of Aliens that I just think takes it just a little above. But then the crazy thing after that is I've never seen anything past Aliens. So I have not seen Alien 3. I've not seen Resurrection. I did see Alien versus Predator because I was 13 in 2003. So like what 13-year-old boy didn't go to the theaters to watch that. But I'm weirdly obsessed with the first two movies, and I've never ventured past them.
Well, I mean, it's a movie that followed up Ridley Scott and one of his biggest classics, Alien.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually one of James Cameron's second or third movie.
Yeah.
Following up Terminator, and what else did he do in there? Or was this the second movie?
I'm actually not sure. Was Terminator his first movie? That would be impressive if it is. I don't remember.
Well, because he came along from I think being the special effects guy on Piranha or Piranha 2.
Yeah.
In the late 70s, I think it was. So it's a different take on the franchise, where the first one was suspense and everything leading to all the tension and everything, with Ripley and the crew being hunted by the original alien that introduced you to the xenomorph. And then this follow-up by James Cameron was a whole different animal. It's more of a action sci-fi or action sci-fi horror. And it was a whole different monster compared to the original. And they brought in the alien queen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real quick, I just want to jump in. I IMDb'd it while we were talking. He actually directed Piranha 2 before Terminator, so that was his first movie.
Okay. I knew it was fairly early in his career that he directed Aliens.
But it makes sense too. I mean, after the success of Terminator, you need to do something as big as Terminator, I think, to be given the sequel to Alien, because it's one of the most beloved movies of the 70s, and like they wouldn't just give it to anybody. So even though he was still young, I think having Terminator under his belt really kind of proved that this guy was the next thing.
Yeah, Terminator, I think, was his first major role. Piranha 2, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, he started off as the special effects and then was handed the role to actually take over the movie.
Yeah.
And so he did Piranha 2, went from kind of like a cheesy horror movie in 82 to Terminator. And that's kind of what landed him on the map. That became a cult classic. And a few years later, he did Aliens, which a lot of people like Aliens better. I prefer Alien just because it just didn't have quite the same feel. There's nothing wrong with Aliens. It's just it didn't have the same kind of suspense and impact, I think, that the first one had, because you'd never seen anything like the Xenomorph by Geiger before. And then this just took it to that action level with the colonial marines, tons of xenomorphs, and finding out that they go back to the asteroid, or whatever it is. What is it? Asteroid, mini planet, whatever that they found them to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I like the pacing of this one better, to be honest. And I said that last week. So did Zambies. The first one just seems slow, but it's introducing you to everything to begin with. And if you pay attention, this one's not as dark, literally as dark of a movie as the first one is. The first one was a darker backdrop settings and everything, where this one seemed like they lightened it up and everything. They used a lot of special effects like Terminator with the lightning and things like that. And it's funny that you mentioned Terminator, because one of the actors was Kyle Reese in Terminator. And he's the one that fell. He fell for Ridley, and he fell for the main one in Terminator. So
Sarah
in
Connor.
my head, yeah. So it's like
he was actually technically John Connor's father too.
Exactly. So did he go back from Aliens to go back in time to go do that? You never know.
It just proves that guy will go through time to fall for a strong woman, because between Ripley and Sarah Connor, I mean, you don't get two more iconic female characters than those.
Yeah, I saw him in there, and I mean, my mouth dropped because I forgot that he was in this movie. I hadn't seen it in a while, like you said. So it was one of those, when I saw him, I had to double check, and I looked it up. I'm like, oh, it is him. So,
well, one of the go ahead.
I was gonna say, I don't know how well you know Terminator 2, but because Cameron likes to use a lot of the same actors, John Connor's stepmom is Vasquez in this one.
Yeah,
and so he's just Jeanette Goldstein, I think is her name, and so yeah, it's just it's a fun rotating cast when you watch his movies.
Well, there's a running joke that Bill Paxton is the only actor to be killed by a Terminator, a Predator, and an alien.
Yeah. I was going to say he was in all those. So
yeah,
that was the other actor in there that kind of stood out.
Yeah, I was going to say a boat too, but I forgot he's only in the future stuff in Titanic, so he didn't get killed by the boat.
But one of the interesting things is that Cameron, the way he does his movies, he always ends up in an industrial kind of environment.
Mm-hmm.
Like the end scenes of Terminator and Terminator 2 were both in some sort of industrial complex. Aliens is essentially an industrial complex, and the terraforming. Then you got the Abyss, which is the same kind of environment. It's just a rig underwater. So he's kind of put his style out there. And even in the Avatar movies, you're still dealing with the same kind of industrial settings in certain parts of the movies.
The set pieces in that last Avatar were very, like when the ships were falling and the kids were trapped under them, it was all very industrial as well.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, Mark, earlier when you were saying how, doesn't have the suspense of the first movie, and it lacks a lot of the stuff that movie did. But I kind of think it was deliberate, where, I mean, I don't know James Cameron, but I think he approached this movie of being like, Alien is a certified classic. It is a horror classic. And we're probably not going to do better if we go for that. So I think he just wanted to change the whole tone and make it more of a sci-fi action film. And to me, I think that's why these two work so well. If he was trying to copy that first movie, I just feel like it never would have reached the heights that it did by doing its own thing.
So, got a question. Did anybody else feel like Elon Musk watched this movie to get the Cybertruck idea?
Oh my God.
That was actually, so the funny thing is I was doom scrolling through stuff and came across a post where the the APC or whatever they called it, the vehicle that they were in was actually just a airplane towing truck that's used to tow some of the big airliners back in the day. And they just kind of added stuff too.
I mean, it's kind of what's so fun about watching movies from this era, where you just get to be like, how did they make everything? As opposed to like, I really like the Avatar movies. I know we're not talking about those, but like, it's just different. It's different when you know, like, okay, this was all created on the computer versus like when when Ripley's moving that loader, I'm still like amazed by that thing. I'm like, what is that, and how did they make that? And like, it's just it's a different era.
I mean,
when
it's probably out of that entire movie, that might be one of the most recognizable and iconic scenes is the loader fight at the end of the scene.
Yeah. I mean, when earlier in the movie, when she was on the loader saying, "Hey, where do you want it?" I kind of expected her to start breakdancing or something, because she got up there and it was so smooth and everything. They're like, because they were questioning her, "Hey, do you know how to use this?" And she's like, "All right, dumbasses, here I am. I got it. Where do you want it?" So
It's almost like they forgot that she worked on one of the refinery ships like 50 years earlier.
Yeah.
I was
And
going to say, was that just in the dream sequence, or was it really 50 years? I mean, I knew she woke up from a dream when they were like, "Yeah, you've been in space for 50 years."
no, I think technically it's like 47 years or something like that. I can't remember the exact time frame, but it's 40 something years. It takes place in the
Yeah, because
well,
they've set up
I
the colony on the island,
Yeah,
so I would
true.
imagine it took 40.
Yeah,
IMDb says 57 years
yeah,
after
57.
the events of Alien.
That's what they said.
Yeah, and they had gotten some of the reports and the black box to find out about LV-426, where they had the terraforming set up. And once they got that information, they sent out people to go check it out, which is what causes the infestation to begin with, is her black box recordings and accounts of what happened.
It's all Paul Reiser's fault.
Yeah.
I forgot Paul Reiser was in this. I was like,
I mean, yeah, there's a lot in the cast on here that there was a lot of 80s, 90s stuff that you see these people in, like what, Mad About You, and a couple other things with Paul Reiser, My Two Dads or something.
for sure.
I just watched him in the new Beverly Hills Cop the other night.
Yeah, he's in
That too.
I'm pretty sure he's on Stranger Things, isn't he? Like the Levin's, like something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been a while since I watched it, but he's on that show too.
He was on that series. So, yeah, like I said, a lot of them, we had said last week, this is one of those series where if you go back and watch it, you'll see people that went on to go and do other things, and you know their faces and their names. But back then, I'm not sure about this one, but back then, a lot of them you didn't know their names right offhand.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Well, a lot of them weren't fully established in their careers at the time. You had
exactly
Sigourney Weaver obviously was. She made a name for herself with Alien and Ghostbusters and various other movies. Plus, she also had a career as a model at one point. So they were kind of resting the whole movie on her as the main character, as the lead, again, like they did with Alien.
Did you guys read? I read that piece of trivia where, like, apparently this script was written before ever talking to her, and they assumed she was signed on for a sequel, but she wasn't. And then the studio almost said no because she wanted, obviously, a pay bump because she was now a star. And I'm just thinking, like, man, if they didn't cave, this whole franchise might have just crumbled under their feet. Like, it would have been such a bad move.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been a franchise.
Yeah.
It would have been one and done, because I don't think you could do this without her.
I mean, they've tried.
Yeah.
You guys will get to it, but yeah.
Yeah, they have tried. They're not as good, but still, to me, it really cemented her. Between that and being Dana Barrett and Ghostbusters are probably her two roles that really cemented her as just like a legend in the industry.
Absolutely.
And she's never, to my knowledge, she has never played kind of a weak female role. I don't think she ever has. She's
not that I can think of.
Always been a strong female role, whether it's a lead or a supporting character. She's always been a strong personality in everything. Dana Barrett, I mean, she stood up with Bill Murray and gave him a run for his money in Ghostbusters.
I was going to say, even supporting, she's kind of like, it feels like she's the lead a lot. So she's always been one of the people that, every time you see her in a movie, like you said, she isn't, it doesn't matter if it's supporting or the main, she's got the strong role to where it almost takes over. So
Absolutely. Mark, it seems like out of the three of us, because you were saying how you like the first one a lot more, is there what are some things about this one that kind of either stand out to you or kind of maybe don't stand out to you that just maybe not stand up to the first one?
So it's for me, it was more of the introduction of the xenomorph and Geiger's work and influence on the original one
Mm-hmm.
that they had to just kind of replicate for the second. It's not so much like Aliens is a fantastic movie. Don't get me wrong. It's that influence that Geiger had on the original that made it stand out is part of why I like it more. And the
Mm-hmm.
fact that you're dealing with more suspense than just almost pure sci-fi action. And the way it was executed, to me, the chest burster scene in the original is just a legendary scene.
yeah,
Yeah.
And the story behind that whole scene is just awesome in itself. You know about that whole thing.
Well, how you talking about how like on the first attempt it didn't really work, but they kind of kept it in the movie? You talking about that?
No,
Oh,
nobody knew about it except for the actor, the director, and the special effects guy.
oh, that's
So
awesome.
everybody's reaction was their genuine reaction to watching this thing burst out of his chest.
Oh,
So you've got that, you've got the space jockey and the alien ship and the whole nine yards. It's stuff you hadn't seen before. So you couldn't really do anything much to replicate that in the second one, except to just build off the story. So you know there's the ship there. They go like idiots, check it out, get a whole colony full of these aliens now. Well, now you've just got more aliens. How are you going to top it? Let's
with a
bring
queen,
a queen.
with a queen at the end. That's how you top it.
the Queen fixing some slurm like Futurama there.
It's and it's kind of why I think I decided to never go past this movie, because I was like, I don't know how you top a queen. And if we're talking just character stories, like the bond between Newt and Ripley, it just works so well. And just jumping ahead to that final scene, like when literally Newt just says like, can I go to sleep? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, can I dream again? And she's like, I think we both can. I like to pretend that's the end. I know what happens in Alien 3. I haven't seen it, but I know what happens in the opening, and I think it's a disgrace to the story, like what they decided to do.
Alien 3 is actually not bad. It's not the best in the series. It's not like the best sci-fi, but it is a solid movie. It's especially if you watch the director's cut.
Okay, yeah.
It's a little better than the regular.
But like, you don't think just, I mean,
yeah.
I guess spoiler to anyone talking, but like, they're just killing Newt and the other three characters in their sleep in between the movies. Like, they could have just done anything else. I just think it was like borderline disrespectful to this script. Like, they worked so hard to save that little girl. It's like, oh, she died sleeping. It's just, I don't know. I was like, I don't like that at all.
Well, they had the same problem they did with was it 2011, 2012 thing? The studio decided to get involved during taping, and there was lots of issues with script rewrites and crap.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody knows how that turns out. It never turns out well.
Yeah. And I know I've heard David Fincher talk about how it's also like he was just so young and like his first big movie, so he didn't really have the Fincher sway that he would have today to do whatever he wants.
So it does tie in fairly well to Aliens and the full story arc. It's not the best of the bunch.
Yeah.
But
we're not talking about you guys.
Let's not go too much further with that. I'll go with Josh. That's for our episode for next week.
All right, cool. Sorry, I'm not going to be here next week. I wanted to just say that.
No, I got you. I'm just telling Mark before he goes down the rabbit hole for next week. So,
but yeah, I mean, I think like one of the big strengths of this movie is how well it's cast and like the way they were able to capture the camaraderie of the Marines. Like, I've never been in a military situation, but this to me just feels so authentic to like how you would be if you were a Marine jocking up to go to war, kind of that cocky attitude beforehand, and then all of a sudden stuff hits the fan, and then like some people the fear comes in, like Bill Paxton, and some people get stronger. I just think it's like that ensemble aspect of this movie works so well.
Well, the Marines kind of underestimated the whole situation to begin with. It's like they just kind of blew off Ripley's details of everything she was telling them. This is what you're dealing with. Don't screw around. The corporation was already kind of blowing her whole story off because they decided they wanted everything as a weapon, as a biological weapon. And in their first encounter, they just kind of get slaughtered.
Yeah.
And they wanted it for money too. They thought that
Yeah.
they can make money off of it, which greed goes above everything else, to where it doesn't matter about the lives that were going to volunteer, the terraform, and goes get the aliens, that they were trying to harvest it to get them back to where they were from.
Yeah, and that kind of corporate greed, I think, is riddled through the whole movie right from the beginning, because right after Ripley's kind of rescued, they barely care about her story, and they're all like, yeah, but you blew up like a $57 million ship. Like, what? Like they were so concerned about the property she destroyed and not about the lives that were killed. And so I think it's riddled right through this movie from the first act.
I think that's part of it. I think that was a cover-up of, at that point when they were first talking to her, she didn't know that they were already terraforming the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So when they came back and said that, it was kind of like, hey, we really don't want to tell her that we're doing this or that we've seen this, because there's no way in hell they didn't know that they were testing all the face huggers that were there. There's no way that wasn't reported back to the mothership, to the main people.
They had put so Mother had reported back to Weyland-Yutani that they had picked up an alien signal, which is part of why they decided to try to colonize that planet. And then they got the information from Ripley and the black box and everything and decided to check it out. Now you got to remember, if they're leaving from somewhere remote in space, it's going to take them months, if not years, to get there, depending on how far out it is. So they never really make clear how long the time frame is between the time she was picked up, had the meeting to tell all of her accounts, and actually gets there. They never really tell exactly how long it was, but it's long enough to infect the whole colony. But they had enough time to also do some testing as well.
Right. And we already established, they had said that they were there for 2 decades or whatever, I think it's what it was in the movie. They stated that they had already been terraforming that long. There's no way that they weren't already testing and had already found them at that point, if they were on the ground, boots down, with people down there.
Well, they found the lab with some of the captured face huggers.
Yeah.
And the records of where they tried to remove them, and some of the patients died trying to remove them.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text help to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
One of my favorite things, especially watching them back to back, was kind of like how that twist in that first one of the android being on board and being with it's his own directive to kind of go against, not care about human life to save the specimen, and then we flip it in this one where the humans like Paul Reiser are actually the evil ones, and then she has to learn to trust Bishop. And I just like that's what I mean by I think this is like kind of a perfect sequel where they make everything bigger, they make everything crazier, but they also just like flip some expectations on from the first one. And it's why I think these two just go together like bread and butter.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up was how did you feel about the relationship between Ripley and Bishop?
I liked it, and the first time I saw it, because I was pretty young, so I wasn't as kind of familiar with movie tropes and stuff. I expected Bishop to turn at one point just because they turned in the last movie. Now I know that if you're writing a sequel, you're probably going to want to change it a little bit. But I remember when I was 14, I was like the whole time I was like, Bishop, I don't trust him, until the end. I was like, I love that guy.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I was young whenever I watched it the first time. So going back and watching it now, you catch some of the lines you may not have caught, like when Bishop says, "Oh yeah, that one had a faulty thing, and that's been corrected. The whole time it was faulty." So that's the reason why it did that. I'm like, all right, they had to address the AI thing. I knew that was coming. Of course, watching it again, I knew it was coming, but you knew that was going to come to try to address it. And I love the fact that they switched it to make her trust AI again with Bishop after what happened in the first movie.
Well, she saw him more as an equal and more human-like than she did the original android from Alien. And he did it basically by proving himself and putting himself on the line in a couple situations to save them.
Because her only ever interaction with an android was to be betrayed by one. So it's like it's obvious, It's like when you watch Terminator 2 and when Sarah Connor sees Arnold Schwarzenegger, she's like, this guy's gonna kill me because that's all I know. And it takes a while for her to gain that trust back, This is very similar to Terminator 2, the more we're talking about it. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah,
I mean, also a great scene.
I mean, he did tell her, he's like, I'm sorry. I think he said I ignored the order or whatever. I had to lay it down so I can get you all in the ship or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like her moment, the aha moment, I guess, because at that point, that's whenever you could see her demeanor kind of change. Whenever he starts talking to her about that, that's when it seemed like she trusted him a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because towards the end when he kind of made that statement.
But they were smart early on too with the classic knife scene with the hand on the table and the knife going through the fingers. That almost made Bishop kind of look careless because he was kind of putting, I think it was Bill Paxton, at risk by doing that. But once you know like that he is good, and he talks about how it's against his programming to ever hurt a human, you actually realize that he was safe the whole time because he physically would be incapable of stabbing him because he's programmed to not hurt humans. So like it changes that scene, I think, when you've seen the whole movie.
And Bill Paxton always puts himself on the line. You ain't got to worry about that. Look at all his movies.
What also brings in the rules of androids from Isaac Asimov?
Yeah.
And one of the rules is they can never do harm or by choice cause harm to happen to a human.
Yeah, I wish I knew that for smart reasons, but I know that because of the iRobot Will Smith movie. that's where I first learned that.
Me too.
I know that because of my book nerd wife.
Nice.
Hi, Kate.
So she every time we watch a movie that has androids in it and something comes up about it, she's like, "Oh, Isaac Asimov." So, yeah. So, yep.
So, how'd y'all feel about them taking Jonesy's out of this one and giving him a Newt? Because that's what it felt like. They replaced Jonesy with Newt on this one, to where Jonesy was the one she was chasing around in the Alien, and Jonesy was trying to run away. This time it was Newt, and the kid is the one saving their life, kind of, because she had already survived more days than anybody else with the invasion.
Yeah, I think it's a real hard thing to pull off what they did, because it's a lot of times if you add a kid to a movie where there was never kids before, it could easily go bad. It could be I don't know how you guys feel about the Mad Max movies, but Beyond Thunderdome, once he finds those kids, I fall asleep. It really puts a stop on that movie for me. So I think it had a lot going against them by deciding to put a kid in it. But I've already spoken at lengths, and I quit the franchise because of what they did to Newt. That's how much I like her. So I'll let you guys talk a little bit about her.
I mean, Newt was a solid character. She proved to the Marines that you could survive in that situation. She also proved that you don't necessarily have to be an adult to deal with a stressful situation like that. She did it purely on instinct and being able to fit in places they may not have been able to. So she had a solid, where Jonesy was more of just a pet. And I mean, everybody loves their pets.
Yeah.
And up until the last few years in horror, you really didn't see the pets die either. He was there kind of as a plot point in a few scenes to kind of warn you that the alien was there, that he could tell it was there, but they couldn't. Where you're not going to take a cat on a mission like this, on a mission like they had to face. And Newt was just a survivor that was there. So where Newt kind of replaces Jonesy, it's a different role. It's more of she was kind of showing them how to survive and that it's possible, where Jonesy was there to kind of warn of the alien in a few scenes.
And to do the classic jump scare fake with a cat, which I know in 1979 wasn't a cliche yet, but would then become a huge cliche.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, I'm going to bring this up because Josh probably would have anyway. So Newt kind of, for mental health, kind of shows you, hey, she was dealing with, death and everything else. She shut down. She didn't want to deal with anybody. She was on autopilot, kind of like me when Mark brought me on the show. But
he found you in a colony surviving off bags of potato chips.
Yeah, I got 4 boys, so kind of, yeah. But no, and then eventually she starts trusting Ripley and open it up and things like that. So the movie does have mental health things in there. If you look at the different people aspects, how they deal with it. You brought up Bill Paxton's character where he all gun-ho, and then he starts freaking out of what we're going to do. We're going to die and everything else. And it took everybody else to calm him down. So this movie has a lot of different versions of mental health in it if you pay attention.
Well, I mean, that's not uncommon to see when you hear kind of soldiers talking about situations they ran into, or what's it called, shell shock during World War I, World War II, where they run into their first actual combat situation. It may not be the best situation, and they just kind of freak. Some people just snap and lose it like that, and some people buckle down and do what they got to do.
Yeah, and that human interaction, I think, just falls into the mental health aspect too, because I firmly believe that like the reason Ripley is like fights so hard to survive is because she meets Newt. And had Newt not been there, she might not have been as determined or been as like focused on survival. And I did read that there was deleted scenes that Ripley did have a daughter back home before. So it's like it was a lot of the juxtaposition. I know there's a video game later that explores that. I just like, I think it's just like it shows that kind of how important human interaction can be and how it can get you out of these situations and get you, past the PTSD.
Yeah, there's a scene, I think, when she's in the hospital where they give her information about her daughter, that she's had kids and is off on a light. I don't remember if she had died or not, but she had missed almost 60 years of her daughter's life.
Yeah.
So she almost gets that chance to really be a mom again with Newt. And she's protecting Newt like she couldn't protect her own daughter because she was in cryosleep.
Yeah. Which again is why, to me, the end of the franchise is them going home and having a peaceful life together, because I can't bear it. I can't bear what happens. It was so nice because the whole time they both suffer from the same nightmares, from the same monster, and then they kill the monster together. And that I think that last line is beautiful. And I already mentioned it, but just like, can I dream again? And she said, I think we both can. And I was like, that's so powerful to me.
Yeah, I mean, I like this one better than the first one. I love the first movie. I love the first movie because it didn't use as much CG to it, CGI.
Yeah,
Because this one, with all the lightning, all the special effects and everything, the first one was more plain, which it hits you even harder to know that they didn't use as much computers or anything else to pull off what they pulled off.
I mean, yeah, I wasn't on the episode, but I just want to state that I think the first movie is one of the best looking movies from the 70s. And unlike a lot of other movies where you kind of have to throw that 70s lens over your brain to know you're watching something old, that thing looks absolutely gorgeous. And I don't see any flaws in the visual aspect of that first movie.
We made a point to say that movie still stands today when you watch it. That a lot of the special effects and the everything, you could walk into that set today and it would still work without using all the CG.
Yeah, like I love Terminator 1, but I got to play pretend a little with my brain. You know, it's like it's like Terminator 2 perfected it, and I think this is the opposite, where the first one is just there's no pretend. Everything's real to me. The facehugger's real. The 7-foot man and the alien is real, and then in this one there, because it's so big and grand, you see like, oh, I see they composited that. There's a matte painting not matte painting, but green screen. Yeah.
Well, even the alien queen was like multiple people acting as puppeteers.
Yeah.
To run that big thing. Kind of very similar to what they did with Jabba the Hutt in the original Star Wars. Was it Return of the Jedi?
Yeah.
It was multiple people in a giant suit. And this one plays out. They did essentially the same thing to get the alien queen because he wanted to use as little CG as possible. And at that time, I mean, Tron was the first CG movie. And you can look and see the jump in effects between Tron and this. At the time, it still looked great. I mean, granted to us now, it's like, that's kind of cheesy looking. But it still goes to show what we always say, that when they do traditional effects, it just stands up a whole lot better.
There's something to be said about real light hitting real objects. Like it's insane. Like it's so rare that's what I'm nostalgic for, but I watch so many modern movies, and even ones I loved. I loved like Furiosa recently, but there was a bunch of times where I was like, man, Chris Hemsworth is standing on a green box surrounded by nothing but green, and I can tell, and it's just a little different.
I mean, in some of the special effects, you could put like two different movies together. For instance, Terminator and this one, and you can see the lightning's the same and all that. So they were using the same special effects in a lot of the movies in the 80s, which is what kind of stood out to me because I never paid attention to that before. But when I was watching this one and the lightning went off, I'm like, oh, yeah, I've seen that before. What movie was that? And then, like you said, I went down the rabbit hole. I'm like, oh, yeah, so many people were involved in Terminator. It was brought over to this.
Yeah. I like to think like if people were to ask like what's like show me one movie to show me quintessential 70s American cinema, I think Alien is that, and then quintessential 80s American cinema is Aliens. Like it's everything about the 80s that we loved, and the other one's everything about the 70s that we love, and it's why it's hard to even compare them for me but it's fantastic.
So how do you feel about what they've shown about Romulus so far? Alien Romulus.
I actually haven't seen anything. I swore off movie trailers about 5 years ago. I don't watch any previews for any movies anymore. I just think they ruin everything. So I actually don't know anything about Romulus.
So it's a standalone movie, kind of a side movie. I can't remember if it takes place between 1 and 2 or 2 and 3, but it's standalone. It's being done by Fede Alvarez.
Oh, okay, nice.
So you might know from
our friend,
Evil Dead remake.
I do.
And he has stated that he did as much traditional effects as he possibly could.
Well, that's exciting.
So there's very little CGI, and it's done by the guy that did one of the best horror remakes ever.
Nice. I don't want to jump like obviously the you guys doing the whole franchise, but have they, since I haven't seen them, have they abandoned like the Prometheus Alien Covenant storyline because wasn't that supposed to be a big trilogy and everything? And
So it was supposed to be a trilogy, and after Covenant, they were going to tie it into Alien. I'm not
Okay.
sure how. I think that's kind of been abandoned. I think they've just finished the taping and working on editing of the Alien TV show for FX. They're doing a Colonial Marines series, or at least they were. I'm not sure if they finished it or what's happened with it. And then Fede Alvarez is doing this one. As far as I know, there's no plans to tie Covenant into Alien at this point.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's been a while now. I don't know how many years, but I feel like that movie has already kind of had its moment and moved on.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
Billy looks confused.
I'm not confused. I was just listening because we had already talked about how far apart this one and the first one was. So, yeah, I mean, but like you said, it's been a while since Covenant. So,
Yeah. I feel like I've never really talked about like video games with you guys on this show, but have you guys played Alien Isolation, the
Yes.
video game?
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't.
How do you? Because that to me is more like a sequel to the first. That's more in line with the first
It
in
is.
terms of tone and setting and everything.
And
But it's also a video game, so it's hard to go. It's apples to oranges.
Well, yes and no, because they do a really good job of telling the story, and you play as Ripley's daughter.
Yes.
And she's looking for any indication of what's happened to her mom, and they knew about the black box and everything was on Sevastopol Station to find out. I never beat it. I keep meaning to go back and beat it. I've got ADHD with video games, and
I'll
I
be
start
honest,
one.
I never beat it either. I was really enjoying it, but there's just like it got kind of really hard, and then I was just like, I got sick of getting killed by the alien. It just kept happening over and over again.
That was the point of the game, is they wanted it to be hard, to be difficult, to try to give you that experience. I don't know if they ever did, but I know they were talking about making it a VR game, which would made it even better.
That would be really cool.
But the sound of the game is completely 100% on point and accurate.
Yeah.
The look of the game is just spot on. It looks like it's part of that universe. You even come across the same kind of clicky mechanical keyboards and the green screen monitors that you have to use for various things. Everything, even the iris air shaft that open and close.
Yeah.
It's straight out of the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's kind of like the Ghostbuster video game that they did back in mid 2000 was just a third Ghostbuster movie.
Yep. That
It's
I have
the
played
same
to
thing.
completion. That one was good.
That was fantastic. Yeah, Alien Isolation is it's a solid game and a solid entry to give you more of the universe, of the Alien universe.
I'm glad to download it because I think it's part of the PlayStation subscription.
It is.
It's free.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
It's more of a survival horror.
Yeah, which was pretty cool because I mean, I feel like every other time they did an alien video game, it was more based on this movie. So it was like grab a gun and mow down as many aliens as you can, and it was like, let's go back to the Ridley Scott kind of. Is Ridley Scott involved at all in Romulus? Again, I know nothing about it. Is he like producing or anything, or like I don't know?
I haven't looked. I was more kind of.
Well, actually, no, I just found that he's making Gladiator 2, apparently. So we'll see where that goes. I think he might be busy with that.
Yeah, I'm not.
Sorry, it's so weird to make a Gladiator 2 in my sense.
I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, IMDb doesn't show Ridley Scott involved. Let me see. Let me look here. Ridley Scott, producer, according to IMDb. So he's one of the producers on it.
Yeah. Interesting.
And Fede Alvarez is the writer, executive producer, and director.
Cool. I think I'm gonna end up seeing it. I think knowing that it's not kind of tied in with a lot of the baggage of these more recent ones, so I don't have to like go back for 10 years of lore. I can just kind of jump into Romulus. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, like I said, I'm looking forward to it because of who's making it.
Yeah.
So while Scavenger, yeah, it's some not kids, but a group of scavengers end up on a derelict space station. Is the very basic description of it.
Nice.
So I'm looking forward to it. But
I'm along for the ride.
Earlier, Mark, when you were talking about Ripley and the loader and how like iconic that look is, was that something? So for me, I know that was kind of spoiled in pop culture before I saw this movie, just based because I wasn't alive in '86 when this came out, or yeah, well, I wasn't, but for me, it was the video game Conker's Bad Fur Day. The end of that movie, you fight an alien queen in this Ripley mech suit. And so, like, I knew that. And then I saw Aliens, and I was like, oh, my God, that's where that's from. So,
well, I mean, that kind of tells you how much of an impact these movies have had.
Absolutely.
They went on to try to make another series, Species, using Geiger's design. And Geiger actually tried to get them to change some of the script because he thought it was just too much like Alien. And I can't remember the alien's name, but she kind of looked a lot like the alien, like an alien human hybrid almost. And yeah, you have scenes like that in Gawker's Bad Fur Day. You've got how many movies have kind of copied the formulas over the years since they came out.
Big time.
It's an iconic series between Alien and Aliens. They had so much impact on so many different things.
Yeah, and like you keep talking about Geiger's design, like I do think the Xenomorph is kind of the perfect movie monster. Like that alone ushered us out of the 50s and 60s of just kind of like rubber suits and just like, I don't know, it just looked so real. The fact they put a 7-foot man in it so it actually towered over people, like I think it just completely changed the way we visualize a movie monster prior to 1979.
Well, I talked about it a little bit in the Alien episode that Geiger had stated that the problem with aliens in movies up until that point was that they were designed from a human aspect, thinking of them as humanoid creatures. I mean, look at Star Trek, Star Wars, just about any sci-fi series or movie that had come out, all the aliens are very human-like. That's why he designed this creature that has almost no human resemblance at all.
Yeah.
It's not green.
Yeah, everything down to the acid blood. It's just like, it's the most terrifying monster. Like I can't imagine people seeing it for the first time.
And they even worked that out, saying it was a silicon-based life form, which is actually theorized. I don't think it's ever been proved, but it's been theorized for decades that they suspect where most, if not all, human life on Earth is carbon-based. They suspect there are situations where silicon life forms would exist. And that's how they justified some of the stuff with the alien, is that it was a silicon-based life form.
That's so much smarter than I could ever be. If I had to think of something, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know, it looks cool, you know? That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean, that's still something you can believe today, that maybe we just haven't found it, but it could still be out there. And like we said, earlier, some movies they don't translate or stand up to time. This is one of those, like, even in that aspect, it's still believable that, hey, we can find that. You never know what's out there.
Yeah, it's just awesome.
And it's also just so impressive. Like I just looked it up because I wanted to see this beforehand. But even the fact that this got a couple of Academy Award nominations, like for the sci-fi genre, for the action genre, that's all horror too. It's all stuff that we don't usually get accredited for, and it's just a testament to how well received this movie was.
I mean, it even brought Geiger to light, and he became just a legendary artist after that, and introduced the world to biomechanical art. He did some designs for the Hells Angels. He did album covers. He had his hands in a lot of different things.
See, that's cool. I didn't know. I'll be honest. I know his name because of Alien, but I don't know much about his career outside of it. So that's really cool to hear.
There were a couple Geiger-themed bars across Europe and Asia. I had heard stories that the one in Japan got taken over by the mob, so they shut it down. I don't know how true it is. But yeah, there's a story, but he had some touring art shows that went on for a little while. I know at one point, close to the time he died, one of the musicians from Celtic Frost was like his assistant. So he was tied up in everything with his art. He influenced everyone and everything you could think of at some point.
That's cool. All right, I got to do a deep dive after we get off this because I feel uncultured by not knowing more about him.
Yeah, there's a documentary. I'll have to look up the name of it. It's on a lot of streaming services. It's just about Geiger and his life, and you find out like he's got some really kind of dark aspects to the way he thinks and views things, and you find out why some of that is. Where I believe his longtime significant other died at one point, and he just kind of mentally kind of moved into that dark space, and his art went in that direction.
So interesting.
Yeah, he's cool. He had a interesting style, to say the least.
So do you guys know? I know this movie has some pretty like infamous deleted scenes, kind of like the one about Ripley's daughter. Do you guys know? Is there like a director's cut of this, or is it just deleted scenes, kind of like on a Blu-ray DVD to watch?
Oh, there's a director's cut.
There is. Oh man!
If you get the quadrilogy, there's a Blu-ray quadrilogy, probably on 4K now. Well, no, they just released Aliens on 4K, so I don't know if there's a 4K collection or not. But they have. I think almost all of them have a theatrical cut and a director's cut of all the movies on the quadrilogy.
Oh man! All right, I gotta deep dive back into this.
Yeah. There's like Alien. We discussed it was a little bit shorter. They cleaned up some of the scenes, and they added in a scene where during the escape, Ripley finds Dallas kind of in one of the cocoons on the wall, still alive.
Oh man!
They talk about Ripley's daughter in the second one, and there's a couple of little small scenes, and there's actually some plot point changes and story changes in the third one.
Okay. Well, yeah, I know you mentioned earlier that if you're going to see the third one, that the director's cut's the better version.
Yeah. Yep.
So in the director's cut, Newt's alive and has a great life and kind of grows gold and has a family and picket fence. And
there's more conflict between her and the prisoners. The story's changed just a little bit, but it's
all right. I'll let you guys say
more coherent
when you cover it. When you cover that one.
So apparently, the director's cut has 17 minutes of bonus footage that are spread throughout the film.
Yeah.
But the special edition includes a restored footage and eliminated scenes from 1986. So I think it has even more than the director's cut. It says both versions have a running time of about 2 hours and 17 minutes.
Nice.
Yeah.
I want to just talk about. I don't really have much to say about it, but just I think one of my favorite scenes, and the one that I think harkens closest back to the original, is when Ripley and Newt are trapped in that room with the face hugger. I think that's like the time where it really builds suspense in a way similar to that first movie. But also from a special effects standpoint, I could still watch it today and I'd be like, that face hugger is alive and moving in that room. And I'm always just like, how do they pull these things off? I know they did some stuff with like reverse motion and stuff, but it's that scene to me is like pinnacle perfect suspense and special effects mixed together.
Yeah, and it really shows how far the corporation's willing to go to get what they want, all for the sake of money.
Yeah, when Paul Reiser turns that camera off, I want to slap him in the face.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he took the gun out of the room, I wanted to slap him in the face. But just the fact that Newt can hold the face hugger just by a table where everybody else, like a lot of adults, would have freaked out. It would have been done. It was just...
Yeah, to me, it like implied like this might not even been her first time fighting off a face hugger. You know, if she's been alive for so long that she might know. It's kind of not obviously you can't know just that you're going to have the opportunity to trap it, but to not be fully afraid and that it can be held back.
Well, I kind of agree with that because she made some comments like, I forget where they were, but she's like, we're going to go back, right? Because you don't want to be out when it's dark or something to that effect.
Yeah. It's
they come out at night mostly.
They come out at night. That's what it was.
Yeah.
So, and this movie has some lines that are iconic that, you know, we know now they use the lines in other movies or refer back to them on commercials and things like that. So,
I mean, get away from her, you bitch, is whatever that list of 100 most memorable movie quotes is. I know that's on there because that is undeniable.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Well, that's like the game over one. Like,
oh my god,
it, Hudson. That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do? I was like,
it's also wild to think about it. Like, not that video games weren't around in 84, 85, but like that was like a pretty new reference to be saying game over. It wasn't like you ever like it was unanimous like in the 90s.
Yeah, no, I mean, and yeah, you're bringing up video games. I don't know if that isolation game would have done as good as it did if it was on one of the older systems, like 8-bit or 16-bit, like side click and shoot versus go through and it's actually like you're there. So
no, I mean it literally if your controller can detect your voice, if you make a noise into the controller, the alien can hear it. It's remarkable. I have it on Switch, so unfortunately mine doesn't do that, but I play it on PlayStation or whatever it does.
Yeah, I've got it on PS4.
Nice.
PS5. So I turn on my entire theater for that game.
Oh man, I might have to play. My wife's out of town tonight. It's nice and spooky. I might just turn the lights off and play some Alien Isolation. Get myself nice and scared.
Well, I think we're close to the end here. Do we have anything else we want to talk about, or are we good?
It's honestly, it's easier for me to podcast about movies I don't love this much because it's just turns into me being like, isn't that part cool? Isn't that part cool? It's easier to when I have critical things to say, but I said it up top. To me, it's kind of a perfect sequel. If Terminator 2 wasn't my favorite movie of all time, I might say this was my favorite sequel, but I just love Terminator 2 so much, but that's no knock on this movie. I think it's a great sequel to a great film.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't really ask for anything much more with it as a sequel to a legend, basically.
Yeah. We basically said this was an iconic movie, even to the legend. It was iconic for movies that came out in the 80s and everything. I don't think we could hit much more on this.
Yeah.
Actually, I think if Terminator put James Cameron on the map, Alien cemented him as being epic.
Yeah. And just another compliment to like just the design of this whole movie. Like my wife has never seen these movies. She's not really, they're a little too violent for her. But she walked by while I was watching Aliens and like there was just a scene of Vasquez holding the big minigun and kind of surveying around. And she was like, this looks like it could easily be like drawn. Like that's how like iconic it is. Like she's like, I can see these characters as comic book characters as like it's so well put together that, you know, like when you draw something, it's perfect because you have all the time in the world to make every detail, but they filmed real people and somehow made it like transcend visually like another level. Like it's a weird compliment, but I was like, wow, that was really cool.
Okay, Mark. So, Andy, where can they find you at?
Thanks, Billy. So you can find me on my other podcast. It's called Love What I Love. We're on anywhere you download podcasts. And if you want to reach out to us on social media, just search LWIL Podcast. You can send us an email or find us on Instagram.
Okay. And everybody can find me at Letterboxd at VABoy99. And Mark, go with yours.
Yeah. Sorry about the unorthodox, unstructured version of the show. That's what Josh is for. But you can find me posting occasionally painted minis on Instagram at Titanium Juggernaut Painting.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I had a blast. I love being on the show, and I can't wait till next time.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And I think that'll do it for us, right, guys?
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
All right.